My papa, Joseph Dugas, was born at Port-Royal around 1690, and my mama, Marguerite Richard, was born in Grand Pré in 1694. They were married in January 1711. Their first son, Charles, was born that same year. A few years later, my papa decided to leave Grand Pré in pursuit of better work opportunities, moving his family to Port-Toulouse on the south coast of Île-Royale. By 1723, there were 13 families in Port-Toulouse, and our family of 3 had grown to 8. In 1726, the family moved from Port-Toulouse to Louisbourg, and I, Jeanne, the 9th and last child, was born in 1731 at Louisbourg on la Rue Royale. But not long after, a smallpox epidemic took the lives of my 3 sisters, and not long after that, my papa. My mama had the house and my papa's 2 schooners, so she kept the business going. Not long after, she married Charles de Saint-Étienne de la Tour. Mama gave him 2 lovely daughters, twins, and all of us together formed a beautiful family. Life in Louisbourg was wonderful. In those days, cod fishing was a large part of our economy and trade flourished. At times, there were as many as 150 ships a year, making it one of the most important ports in the New World. When I was 13 years old, to please Mama, I wore a silk dress to the feast of Sainte Anne. It was a wonderful party, and my brothers, especially Joseph, told me I was beautiful. The situation between France and England had gotten so bad that while we were visiting Grand Pré in 1745, the fortress of Louisbourg fell into the hands of the English. There was great turmoil in those days between the French, the British, and New Englanders, and as for us, we just tried to survive. In 43, my sister Angélique fell ill with a fever and died. And not long after the death of Monsieur Latour, Mama went peacefully in her sleep. We buried her at Grand Pré, under a large oak tree that she loved so much, next to Angélique. A couple of years later, Louisbourg had been given back to the French, and Joseph decided he was going to return to Île-Royale with his family, and I followed him. Life was getting better in Port-Toulouse, and Joseph was earning a good living with his schooners, carrying all sorts of goods between Île-Saint-Jean, Nova Scotia, and Île-Royale. There was a very persistent young man in Port-Toulouse named Pierre Bois. I finally accepted his proposal, and not long after, we were married. Our first child, Marie, was born a year later. We were happy, but that did not last. War, always that never-ending war between France and England. The English began to deport the Acadians, living in what's now mainland Nova Scotia. Hundreds drowned or died of diseases they caught aboard the ships. Grand Pré and many other villages like it burned to the ground. It was no longer safe for us in Port-Toulouse. We knew Île-Royale, and especially Louisbourg, might be attacked at any time, and so we left. We stayed in Île-Saint-Jean for a time, and then moved on to Remchick, where living conditions were bad. After a few years, our families decided to return to Port-Toulouse, and there we spent another winter in misery. In 1758, under the command of Charles Deschamps de Boisébert, la Compagnie Franche de la Marine arrived to defend Louisbourg. In the end, it was all for nothing. The fortress fell into the hands of the English, and soon after was completely destroyed. And just like that, the French reign in North America was extinguished. Commandant Boisébert took the soldiers and Mi'kmaq warriors that remained and retreated to his post on the Miramichi River. The remaining Acadians boarded their schooners and followed him. Homeless and countryless, we were now refugees. In Miramichi, there was a glimmer of hope. Maybe the English would simply forget about us and leave us to this little corner of the earth. So we settled in as best we could at what was essentially a refugee camp, where we just tried to survive. The French warships finally arrived, but they too were defeated, and in September, Montreal fell as well. So it was on the Restigouche River that the last battle between the French and the English in Acadie was fought and lost. That winter was one of the hardest of my life. We had nothing to eat and no gunpowder to hunt with. We survived by foraging in the woods for plants and roots that the Mi'kmaq had taught us to eat. We ate whatever we could find, even cow skin. When you have no choice, you do whatever it takes to survive. When Colonel Roderick Mackenzie arrived, those of us who were able to hid in the woods. But the English eventually caught up with us, and we were taken prisoner. First, we were taken to Fort Cumberland for a while, and then on to Halifax, where we were imprisoned on George's Island. The island of the damned, where winters were cold and it was always windy. There was never enough to eat, no medicine. Life was so hard there, especially for children. When they took sick, there was nothing we could do but pray and watch them die. Like my twins, a little boy and a little girl. They died in my arms when they were 2 years old. They're buried on that island of misery. Yet even then, in my darkest moments, in the depths of my grief, Pierre was by my side, my husband, my friend, my anchor, without whom I would never have survived that hell. After 3 years on George's Island, we were free. We stayed in Chesapeake for a time, and then on to Arichat, which was not far from Port Toulouse. There, Pierre learned how to be a fisherman, and life was good for a while. But as always, it didn't last. The Americans were now in the midst of revolting against England, and once again the Acadians became caught between two enemies. The American privateers attacked the Caboteurs, as well as the coastal villages, and so we had to escape once again. This time to les Îles de la Madeleine, where we stayed for a few years, and then we traveled on to Cascapédia in the Gaspé Peninsula, where my brother Charles and his family had settled. Some years later, we learned that Charles Robin was looking for fishermen in a community in northeastern Cape Breton called Chéticamp. Those who accepted his offer would be given their very own land. And that is how it came to be that Pierre Bois and 13 other heads of Acadian families became the founders of Chéticamp, as they would one day be known, the 14 elders, les 14 vieux. I was 54 years old at the time. I was tired. I had spent more than 30 years of my life wandering from one place to another, never staying anywhere long enough to call it home. It was time to start planting roots. Life was peaceful in Chéticamp. I was happy here and much in demand as a midwife. I even had an important visitor, Monseigneur Plessis, who wrote of me in his letters. And even if Pierre and I were part of the founding families, the name Bois is not found in Chéticamp. That's because we had 2 daughters who married a Poirier and a Godet, and our son François Régis only had daughters. Yet we have hundreds of descendants still living here in Chéticamp. I died at the age of 86, and I was buried under an apple tree in Le Platin, where it is quiet and there is hardly any wind.
Tu es fille de acadienne. Tu es femme de grand pré, sous un chêne t'as enterré ta sœur et ta mère. Jeanne d'Acadie, femme acadienne. Les fleurs sauvages du platin murmurent ton nom comme une chanson. Mais Jeanne, tes enfants ont bâti ce pays. Tu as semé la vie, toi Jeanne d'Acadie. Tu es femme